we go live. Now, here we are in state-controlled Britain, where you can't speak your mind freely, unfortunately. You can do some pretty horrible stuff and not get told off, but if you go on Facebook or Twitter and say you don't like something that's happening, get a bang, bang on the door and the police will come and take you away. So that's said in 19 seconds at the beginning, and that's now out of the way, and I will welcome on stage the galaxy's top nutritionist, Richard Smith. Hi, Richard.
Stephen Thomas. Good day, kind sir. You okay?
Good day. Yeah, I am. I'm very okay, actually. And as I said to you privately, I really missed you when you couldn't do the 2 Sundays, so it's nice to have you back.
Getting soft on me.
Yeah, well, you're very good at what you do, and I think people appreciate it. So with that being said, I'll just remind people, if you want to ask a question, you can put a QQQ in front of it and then ask a question, and myself or Richard will answer it live. We haven't seen the questions beforehand, and I think in the space of 3 or 4 years we've been doing this, maybe 3 questions where we've said no idea whatsoever. So, yeah, I'm not sending you out a challenge now to try and find a question we don't know the answer to.
Don't do that.
Yeah, like, for instance, what is my brother's middle name? Because we won't know. But anyway, right. So, yes, let's get straight to the questions. Enough of this chat. Let's get straight to it. So don't forget, if you want to join the chat and jump the queue or support the channel, you can do a super chat. That would be amazing. Right. So Crazy Couple 799. Good evening, gentlemen. Is it okay to take iodine drops while on the carnivore diet? Do you want to go for that, Rich?
Yeah, brilliant question. You can fill in on the tests and the mechanisms involved for working this out. But it's I would see if you are deficient first, because you can cause issues if you overconsume iodine. Many people are devoid, but Steve can fill you in on some simple tests that you can do at home. And I would advise that you do them before taking. I mean, clients I've worked with, I don't think that they've required additional iodine or iodine for our friends across the pond. But they feel so much better for taking them, and I think that is the important factor here, isn't it? How do you feel? But there are tests you can do. So Steve, if you want to explain them, fire away.
All right. Okay. Yeah, that's very quick. Yes, you can do. Well, the most clinical one is the iodine clearance test. And this is where you're given a tablet or a drink which has a certain amount of iodine in it. And then over the next 24 hours, your urine is monitored. And just to make the sums easy, let's imagine that tablet has 100 units of iodine in it. You swallow that tablet. Over the next 24 hours, you excrete out 100 units of iodine. It's pretty clear you didn't need that supplement because your body is getting rid of it. Well, that also works. That principle is one of the things that works when people say, just take it, because if you don't need it, you'll excrete it. Because that is also true, but you can actually have too much iodine. It is difficult to overdose, but you can actually do that. Another test people do is they rub it on their skin, and if it disappears quickly, the color, then that can indicate that you're deficient because your body is soaking up the iodine. But that's not as good as the iodine clearance test. But I do think, Richard, you're right. And one of the weirdest things about the test is I've had people take the test and then message me. I give my private WhatsApp out to many people that I do consults with. And, I've had messages saying, yeah, I'm definitely iodine deficient. I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that they could do the test that quick. And the message is, no, I've just taken the tablet and I feel amazing. So I think it's a good question. But don't forget, seafood has iodine in it. Eggs does. Eggs do, I should say. So you are getting it. If you've got dairy, obviously milk and cheese has it as well. It is, fun fact, I suppose, the only hormone in the entire body that needs a trace element in its construction. Actually in its construction, not as a cofactor, is the only hormone that needs this trace element, which is basically coming from the crust of the earth. So it's an interesting topic, iodine, but definitely, I'm the same as Richard. I've had people take the supplement, take the drops, the Lugol's drops, and feel so good. But we're both into clinical experience and what people present with, so you can't argue with that. But I think if you can afford to do the test, I'd do the test first.
One important thing, I think, Steve, to remember when it comes to this way of living is that the iodine we do consume, more of it becomes bioavailable because we're no longer consuming the cruciferous vegetables such as broccoli, spinach, and kale, so on and so forth, because these contain compounds called isothiocyanates, which prevent the absorption of the iodine in the first place. And then if we look at the pathway, the pathway involves iron. Much of the conversion is an iron-dependent pathway, and then selenium, compounds that we obtain in high quantities from living this lifestyle anyway. So just gravitating towards a more animal-based way of living and removing these plant compounds, you usually see better function of the thyroid anyway. And not to mention that the vegetables that are high in beta carotene also hinder thyroid production. So all of these things combined, when we gravitate into a ketogenic or carnivore or meat-heavy based way of living, and seeing the removal of these cruciferous vegetables and these anti-nutrients, we usually see better uptake anyway.
That's brilliant, Richard. Yeah, thank you. And Cami has pointed out something which I always mention when people start talking about the bloods. She's put, my thyroid antibodies went from 76 to almost 500 when I started taking iodine daily. And that is something that I always mention to people, because we will have a certain level of, I don't know which antibodies we're talking about there, Cami, but I'm assuming TPO, but it could be TG. So thyroid peroxidase and thyroid globulin both generate, there's antibodies that the body generates. Now, you will never get a 0 score. As she said there, she started with 76. The immune system has these checks and balances. It's always checking in. Again, to keep the maths really simple, when you go to this way of eating and you provide the body with all the nutrients it needs to make thyroid hormone. So in the follicular cells, in the colloid, that's where thyroid hormone is actually stored. Many people come to this way of eating with a background of calorie restriction or low fat or whatever, and they can't even store 1 day's thyroid hormone. And then it's got a capacity, each follicular cell has 50 days worth capacity. You start to do this. So let's say you were making, again, to keep the numbers really easy, if you 100 units of thyroid hormone in your follicular cells, and this meant that you had 76 antibody checks, there's 76 antibodies coming in to check what's going on, that's totally fine. If you then doubled your production and you saw an increase in the antibodies, which was double or slightly less than double, that probably would be okay. But in that case there, where it's over 5 times, that's indicating something else is going on. And of course, there are many things we could talk about with thyroid, but obviously this is not medical information. This is just for entertainment's sake. But anyway, hopefully that's a nice little thing that you've just added. Let's go to the next question. Jonathan is saying hello. He's put in the comments, what time should he ring you, Mr. Smith? So
fantastic question, Jonathan. Carnivore Muscle. Drop me a message in the morning. I found out today that it is teachers training tomorrow, so I have my little girl with me. So my plans have changed slightly, but yeah, drop me a message, man, and we'll tie something up. Best guess, it'll probably be towards the afternoon, if that's okay. But yeah, we'll sort something.
Okay. Well, I know you snuck that through without a QQQ. I don't know how that happened. Right. Jill is saying, I've recently had surgery. Should I keep up taking creatine or wait until I'm back training after I've recovered? I'm still taking electrolytes and MCT. Thanks for all you both do.
Fantastic. And thank you, Jill. It depends on how much you're taking. Look, I don't think it's going to harm taking the creatine anyway. Creatine can be incredibly beneficial for building and repairing. Protein is the most important if you've just had surgery. So I would be inclined to increase protein if you're not already on high protein. Protein is the magic elixir in regards to healing and repair, and eat the protein with the fat. I don't see a problem with taking the creatine. I've recently come away from it for testing purposes. A few weeks back, I had a few cluster migraines. And the only thing that I had changed was increasing my creatine consumption. So I think it's to do with a mechanism in which it was causing some form of dehydration. But since I've stopped, my migraines have gone away again. So obviously that was just one small test. I do need to reintroduce it to make sure that the results from this aren't purely to do with, there are other contributing factors involved also. But creatine under normal circumstances, I think, is incredibly beneficial.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much. It's good that you're here because I can do a bit of admin with because your answers are always full and frank and brilliant. So that's cool. Let's go to the next one, which is Tam. Hi, boys. Hope you're well. Trying to do a 3-day fast. Oh my gosh, the pain I was in. And I think there's a next bit to it, which is, and had runs 3 days. Had to come out of the fast because I was in too much pain. Can you explain how to stop the runs? I got to 3.6 keto mojo. I think that's a GKI 3.6.
Yeah, Tam, look, I'll be honest, that is unusual for fasting. I'd be inclined to say that you've picked up some sort of virus. And the reason I say this is lots of friends recently have come down with a similar thing. I don't think it was to do with the fasting, but what I would say is that next time you try to fast, increment it slowly. Maybe begin with a 24-hour, for example. And remember that fasting is fantastic. There are benefits to fasting, and the main reason that one would fast is to put the body into a state of autophagy. Autophagy is cellular repair and regeneration. Think of going into a fridge and taking out all of the old produce that is, that is rotting and causing problems. We take that out and we're replenishing it with fresh meat, for example. That's what autophagy does. It cleans up the old, sick, dying cells and creates new, younger, stronger, fitter, faster ones. Incredibly beneficial. It also improves insulin sensitivity, brown fat activation, lipolysis, and so on and so forth, and helps with inflammation. Remember, Tam, that living a low-carb, ketogenic, or carnivore-based lifestyle is going to elicit these responses, whether you were fasting or not, but just at a lower level. I am inclined to think that just living the lifestyle and implementing 16 hours a day fasting is at least close to being just as beneficial as a 2 or 3 day fast. Now it does depend on many things. There are lots of other contributing factors to this, but what I would say is I wouldn't recommend fasting for someone who's new to the lifestyle. I wouldn't recommend fasting to someone who is on a carb lifestyle, because they're going to break the fast with carb, which causes hypoglycemia and can be very dangerous. Look, I would suggest implementing a series of incremental change with this. Maybe start with the 16 hours and increment up, but you're benefited from just living the lifestyle. Fasting will confer huge benefits once you are in an adapted state. So, and I know, Tam, you've been living this lifestyle for quite some time, so you're probably in this category, which means that that's what leads me to believe that having diarrhea or upset stomach is very unlikely. Like, you don't see that. It's usually the opposite, in fact. So I think that you've come down with some sort of virus or something at the moment. There's lots of it going around. So maybe give it a couple of weeks and then begin maybe with a 24-hour and increment slowly. But just remember that when you are adapted, max autophagy is achieved far sooner. So what this means is, for somebody who is not ketogenic to reach what we call max autophagy usually takes 5 days, but for us it's probably 2 or 3 days. So I don't see a benefit really in fasting beyond this. But what you could do is implement dry fasting after this. But then dry fasting I don't also recommend for somebody who isn't used to fasting also. I think that's level 5. So, I mean, that's something that we do a little bit further down the line. But Tam, give it a little while and try again. I don't think it was to do with your fasting, unless you were consuming maybe too much of. So you're in a fasted state, but you can consume things like electrolytes. You can consume things like exogenous ketones and MCT. Now, if you were these can be really beneficial in a fasted state, by the way, because they allow you to increase the state of autophagy. But if you are taking them when you are fasting and you're taking too much, this could potentially cause gastro issues. So next time, if you were using them, maybe take them out or take less. The electrolytes I would keep in, especially for the first few fasts as your body adapts. Obviously, when you start to do a dry fast, you'd remove them. But try again in a couple of weeks' time and report back.
Excellent. Thanks for that answer. Yes, I'd have to agree with you about 3-day fasting. I've never encountered people having those sort of problems. So to use the sort of local parlance, I think there's a bug going round, because that seems to be the only explanation, actually. So let's go to the next one. Meat-tastic, mate. Oh, it does a lot of work for charity. My name's Mike Smashy Nicey, I think. Meat-tastic. Anyway, I think that's where that comes from. I'm eating bacon most days, just a couple of rashers of plain streaky bacon from my butcher. Should I be worried about the nitrate used in its production? No.
Snap. Look, it's nitrates break down into nitrites. Nitrites increase nitric oxide. Nitric oxide, a potent vasodilator, directly correlated with longevity. What we need to remember is question everything. And this is what, and you should even question the things that Stephen and I say. Always question the science, because I was speaking to somebody recently in regards to how we adopt this lifestyle. We come into this world of nutrition, and what we believed a year prior may not be, and what we believe to be true then may not be true now. What I believed to be true when I was adopting a low-carb ketogenic lifestyle, the majority, the foundation is still correct, but the additional levers or pillars that we've built on this foundation, my opinion has changed. And I'll just give you an example. When I adopted a ketogenic lifestyle, I was plant heavy. I believed in plant compounds and that we needed them for vitamins and minerals and these magic elixirs that we can't get from anywhere else. And I believed that wholeheartedly. And I was really, I was the fittest and healthiest that I'd ever been prior to that. Then I removed them, and then I was fitter and healthier still. And that's what led me down the rabbit hole of investigating the vitamins and mineral content within plants compared to animal proteins. And that was a game changer. And that's just one example. So I believe that ketogenic lifestyle should predominate plant compounds when I started. And that's what I was teaching. I no longer believe that. We should always question this. This is the difference between the truth seekers and the health community, if you like. We shouldn't get stuck in our way. And credit to people like, and I'm going to, Steve, you probably hate me for this. In one respect, like Paul Saladino was carnivore and then introduced carbohydrate. Look, I think he's incorrect. I think he's but if he's done it for the right reason, because he actually believes what he says, to come away from that, what you once believed and told the universe, I respect that. I do believe that there's hidden agendas into why he's done that. I don't think the reasons he's given are valid. But look, this is just my opinion. But my point is that if somebody has a stand and they change it because they've come across new information, Professor Noakes, perfect example. So I had the pleasure of meeting Prof. Noakes recently in South Africa at the World Nutrition Summit, where I presented on a carnivore-based lifestyle. Maybe that's a presentation we can get into in the school group at some point. But what I presented was very different to what I once believed. Very, very different. And Professor Noakes himself, Professor Noakes invented carb loading. He was all for carbohydrate. And then in 2016, diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, he changed his view and he rewrote his book on high carb lifestyles. So, and I respect that. So this is important. Now, what we need to remember when it comes to things like bacon being bad for us, it's the same as red meat. We're told that red meat causes cancer, and it doesn't. When you understand the mechanisms involved, we can get into that. We're told that saturated fat is bad for us, but it isn't. We're told that salt is bad for us. We're told that grains are heart healthy and seed oils. All of these things within this community we now know to be untrue, and it's the same with bacon. Nitrates make nitrites. Nitrites increase nitric oxide. Nitric oxide, potent vasodilator, directly correlated with longevity. And this is the reason that the UVA rays from the sun are beneficial It's not because of the vitamin D, it's because of the increase in nitric oxide. Vitamin D has a place, but the benefits conferred do not come wholeheartedly from the vitamin D. The majority of these benefits are from the nitric oxide, the compound that your bacon is going to increase. Now, that said, there are negative or downstream effects potentially from consuming bacon because they naturally contain higher levels of linoleic acid, about 10 times higher than beef, but it's non-oxidized if it's fresh. So, yeah, and again, pigs are fed typically grains, and I'm a big believer in eating compounds, eating the animals that eat the foods that they are meant to eat. And I don't believe that pigs are foragers. They're meant to be living in the woods, not eating grains. But the worst quality animal protein you will find is exponentially healthier than the best plant compound in your supermarket. So bacon, I eat at least once or twice a week.
Brilliant. Excellent. Now, the wonderful Herbert has done a super chat of £5 and put a question there. We'll come to that in a minute, definitely. And
Andrew Scarborough, good friend of ours.
Andrew Scarborough, thank you. £2. Oh, your camera's gone off, Rich.
Still here.
Yeah. All right, mate. Andrew Scarborough, yes, £2. That's really kind of you. It might seem nothing to a lot of people, but it really helps. It mounts up. And don't forget, we're fighting YouTube. They take a lot of it. I think about 30%. Anyway, Herbert, thank you. That's put you up the queue a bit. What could be the cause of cracks in the corners of the mouth? Well, that can be many things. So you can get saliva pooling. That's especially overnight if you're a mouth. What's the word? Yeah, mouth breather. Don't like using that because it's now a derogatory term. But if you are a mouth breather, that can cause it. I used to have problems, actually, of exactly that. I've got very misaligned teeth because I was fed a low-fat diet. My mum and dad believed in the food guidelines, and my teeth, not only am I English, which is bad teeth anyway, but they're very misaligned. Yes, and if you have false teeth or an older person, if they're not fitting very well, so basically if your teeth are not really in good shape, that's going to cause it. Licking your lips is another one. Some people have that habit or can do that, and it can sometimes be a simple yeast overgrowth or a bacterial overgrowth. If you want to get into the vitamin deficiency, B2 riboflavin is a common one, iron and zinc deficiency, two others, because those things are essential for rebuilding. Niacin can also be a problem. So yes, actually keep the mouth dry. That's one. Many people think that keep continually sort of licking their lips actually helps, but that doesn't work actually, because the liquid evaporates and you become dehydrated in that area. Some people put like Vaseline on, which is a barrier, which is going to stop the evaporation of fluid, really. But the best way to do it is to make sure you get enough nutrients. And I use everything like little tooth things, make sure that my teeth are really, clean. I've always got these here. So anything that can help the whole area is something. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything, Richard, to be honest.
Yeah, brilliant question. Look, I think there's a number of contributing factors, as you say, dehydration. Adding tallow is far better than Vaseline because, as you say, Vaseline creates a protective layer, which we don't want because we want the body to be absorbing these high quality fats. Tallow, fantastic. Yeah, tallow, incredibly beneficial. Intestinal permeability can cause issues. High cortisol, candida, many other things. So look, all of these things come down to what we put in. What we put in is what we get out. So Herbert, I don't think he's asking for himself. Herbert is I'm guessing this is for a friend or family member, because Herbert is a seasoned professional in this way of living. But it could be as simple as dehydration. Tallow, I've always got tallow with me to put on my lips. I even put on my hands, my feet, sometimes my face. But tallow, and look at what you're consuming. Just make sure milk. So milk, the casein in milk and cheese can cause the intestinal permeability. But again, Stress is a big contributing factor because this controls the production of sebum, which can lead to dry and cracked skin, especially in the hands, but also in the mouth. So a couple of things to go after there, Herbert, but keep us updated.
Yeah, I used to have cracks on my hands all the time, but I think that's because when I was 14, I had a Saturday job at a butcher's, believe it or not. Putting my hand in freezing cold water, which had bleach in it, no gloves, because it was the old days, scrubbing the butcher's board, which was, anyway, let's move on. Sue is giving us £5, which is excellent. Really appreciate you guys doing this, and we really appreciate the support. It is genuinely very helpful. So thank you. And Cruz, thank you both for the feedback at school. So we've mentioned school a couple of times, and for those people that don't know what school is, I think this is a time just to quickly mention what school is. So let's just share the screen so you can see. If you're interested in joining school, some exciting news about it as well, actually. We're going to be offering a sort of more premier tier very soon. But if you want to join, basically getting now before any prices go up, those people that are already paying, that's guaranteed for life. But if you're a new member, that price that you join at will be guaranteed for life. But this is what it's like. You can ask loads of questions and you'll get lots of answers back from people within the community. And our community is absolutely chock full of people who know what they're doing. We just mentioned Cruz, for instance, who does ask a lot of questions on behalf of other people. So that's pretty cool. There's also a classroom, and we have loads of courses. The more active you are, the more levels open up. And they've all got free ebooks. They've all got free videos to watch day by day, lots of instruction. Fruit and veg, for instance, it talks about the food growers. There's PDFs from the actual food growers telling us all their secrets about the fact that apples are over a year since they were picked before they get on the shelf, those sort of things. And we will be introducing a sort of premium level tier, which existing members can upgrade to. And there we'll be doing some teaching. We'll actually teach you things. There might even be tests for some of the sections to see what your knowledge is. And that should be, well, that's in the making right now. Should be out this week, I think. And we've got the calendar where you can see that we always do a live. We do a live on Monday at 6 p.m. We do a live on Wednesday at 7 p.m. I do that one. And then we also do a live here. We are in YouTube, which is free, of course, but the school community gets another one at 8 p.m. So if you want to join school, I think Richard might have put a link in the chat. Indeed. Yeah, I saw him typing, so that's really good. Doing a bit of admin while I waffle on, so the boot's on the other foot. So thank you for that. Let's get back to the questions, and we will go to the top of the list, which is here. We've done that one. Oh, yes, Curtis. There you go, Curtis Flowers. Great to be at my first live after joining the school. That's great. Welcome on board. Of course, this is the YouTube one. Hopefully, we'll see you at 8 o'clock tonight or wherever you live in half an hour, because I'm talking 8 o'clock p.m. here in State Controlled Britain. So that's excellent. Right, let's do the next question. Right, this is a little bit confused, this one, but I'm used to that. Just heard that high fat with protein slows absorption of insulin, causing blood sugar to increase, and then the body makes more insulin. Should we not add fat to protein to keep insulin levels down? I think that's you're probably listening to some misinformation, or you've got the wrong end of the stick. So if you have a high fat with protein meal, what slows down is stomach emptying, nothing to do with insulin whatsoever. And that's why when you have a high fat meal, you feel satiated, you feel full for longer. I mean, that's a known thing, nothing controversial so far. So the absorption of your nutrients is slowed down. Because there's no carbohydrate in there, you're not going to spike insulin. Fat has a very minimal effect on insulin. Protein has a slightly bigger effect on insulin, not that much. And carbohydrates, I don't know, maybe double, 3 times, depends on the carbohydrates. So this information might have come from someone who's looking at a carbohydrate-based meal and saying if you add protein before or fat before, you can change your blood sugar levels. I think I've heard people say that, but it's just mixed thinking, really, because if you're eating fat and protein, insulin is rarely a problem. To be honest, I haven't come across it in 10 years 11 years now, low carb, keto, and carnivore. And don't forget, I do bloods, so I see bloods all the time. You don't really absorb insulin. Insulin is, it's a peptide hormone. It comes out. It is a signaling molecule, basically, and it tells the cell to open up and accept glucose. The GLUT4 transporter being the main one that most people talk about. Insulin does loads of other things. It's a catabolic hormone. It builds you up. It's not something you absorb. It's something that you produce, or the pancreas produces in its cells there. In response, it will do extra if there is, mainly when carbohydrate is increased, dietary carbohydrate, or when your body, because of glucagon, has started to produce more blood glucose because the body needs a little bit more glucose in the system, and then insulin will react to that as well. So it's a sort of moot point, the question. Should we not eat fat to keep fat to protein to keep insulin levels down? No, you should. Fat and protein is what the body's made of. In fact, the body is 99% fat and protein. There's only 1% carbohydrate when you look at it as an overall sum, excluding water, obviously. Right. Did you want to add a little bit to that, Richard? Sorry, I waffled on there.
I think you've nailed it. Look, what I would say is, if you are concerned, wear a continuous blood glucose monitor. Eat nothing but protein and fat, and what you'll observe is this.
It'd be boring.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think, and I'm not picking up on you, Richard, but that doesn't even measure insulin. So we're using the blood glucose as a proxy for insulin.
Yeah,
you could have actually really perfect blood glucose, in your opinion, but have high levels of insulin. So you could be having a problem in the making. What
they were saying was the absorption is causing blood sugar to increase, but there is no increase in blood. There may be a small increase, but this is to do with the protein, because protein will elicit that response. And as Stephen says, fat has little to no response at all on insulin itself. So I think predominantly, that we should change the protein on as in high fat and leaner days, but generally fat or protein should be consumed with fat. Nature provides us with this perfectly packaged present. Everything in nature that comes with protein comes with fat. An egg is almost equal ratios of protein and fat. Beef, protein and fat. Chicken breast with the skin on is protein and fat. And in our wisdom, we think we know best. We come along and we remove the fat from the protein. But protein in nature comes with fat. And that's how I believe that it should be consumed. At least most of the time.
Brilliant. Yeah, great answer, Rich. Right. Curtis Flowers, who is really excited about joining school. I can't wait to see you maybe at 8 o'clock as well. See you face to face. Evening, 2 years carny. Only now I've been experiencing GERD on and off. I eat a lot of fat for fuel to make sure it doesn't feel like I'm giving birth when going to the loo. SOS for crudeness, or sorry for crudeness. Any help?
Yeah, Curtis, I think just reading this, and we can get into this in the school group in 27 minutes. I'm guessing that you're probably consuming a lot of mince beef with the rendered fat. I'm guessing that that's going to be the biggest issue. The reason for this is that the compounds that are higher in histamine are going to elicit a mast cell response, which is going to lead to gastro distress and acid reflux. 2 years into carnivore, incredibly unusual under normal circumstances. But my best guess is that you're consuming too much mince, or aged meats can be problematic, or fished foods, seafood, including fish. Anything that's going to be higher in histamine can be problematic. Now, aged meats, we are told that these are the creme de la creme. But the problem with aged meats is that the bacteria feeds on a protein called histidine. And when they do this, they make histamine. And then we consume them exogenously. And this, again, can bind to mast cells and cause acid reflux. So that's my best guess. We can get into this in school. But mince or aged meats or fish or all, I think, is probably the reason that you get in that. And the solution simply is to eat less of them, eat meat that is fresh. Fresh is best. Personally, I visit the butcher once a week. I'll buy a week's supply of my meat. I'll freeze some, So I'll keep the fresh in the fridge. I'll cook this. And as I'm consuming or taking the fresh meat from the fridge, I'm replacing it with some of the frozen meats on a daily basis. And this obviously thaws out and defrosts in the fridge over that 24, 48-hour period. And then it's always fresh. So I always eat, I do like mince. I eat mince several times a week. I love seafood and I love aged meats. But this led to a histamine response recently when I was in South Africa, because everywhere that we went was seafood and aged meats. And I came back with this incredibly runny nose and little bursts with skin conditions and things. So this was a histamine response. And how we deal with this, we can deal with this in a number of ways. We consume a compound called DAO, diamine oxidase, which we can get from kidney, or we consume highly nutrient-dense organ meats, which are high in all of the B vitamins, which will help with methylation, which can help with HNMT, histamine and methyltransferase. So this will help from an exogenous and an endogenous perspective. But look forward to getting into this in more detail in 20 minutes or so.
Excellent, Rex. Excellent. I was just replying to Laura. The Courtney Luna video that I did is out in at 9 p.m. UK time, so an hour and a half time if you're interested in that, which she is. She asked that question. Right. Let's get the next question up then. After the sugar diet craze, I'm thinking of doing a granulated gelatin diet. Do you think I could survive eating nothing but granulated gelatin? No, straight off the top of the bat. I don't think that's a serious question, but straight away, there's no tryptophan in there. So one of the 9 essential amino acids is not present. But I'm not sure if it's a real question. What would you say, Richard?
Yeah, look, we can survive on almost anything for a prolonged period of time because the body has stores of fats and proteins. But yeah, it's not one that I would recommend. And I don't think it's, as you say, it lacks essential aminos.
No fat at all?
There's no fat, which is, so we have a quite a large supply of fat stored in the body, but we know that we can't survive on lean protein forever, because of rabbit starvation. So if you search for rabbit starvation, you'll see that if you live on nothing but lean meats for a prolonged period of time, you will eventually die. We do need the fat. Fat is critically important. So you can survive on this for a prolonged period of time, and you'll probably see weight loss. I mean, you will. I should imagine you'll see a significant weight loss. But the reason for this is that you're reducing the amount of dietary fat that you're consuming exogenously. So your body's going to tap into this. And you can do this on keto or carnivore just by eating leaner meats, for example. But the biggest lever, if weight loss or fat loss is the goal, there are bigger levers to pull. Cheese, for example, double cream, Greek yogurt, anything that's going to contain the order chain fatty acids is going to store more fat than from a caloric perspective. So it's not to do with the calories. So that would be my first protocol. Remove any of the creams and the cheeses, for example, that you are consuming. Go for lean protein for a couple of days, and you'll see this a significant increase in fat loss. Now, I don't recommend this for everyone. I'm not saying that this is something you can do long term. This is a lever that you simply pull when you've plateaued for a prolonged period of time. But just to reiterate what Stephen said earlier, protein should be consumed with fat generally, because this is what your body's made of. In fact, if we were to look at the cell as a percentage, 70% of it is water. Minus the water, the majority is protein. And then the next is fat, with only 1 to 2% being polysaccharide or sugar. So if we are made predominantly of protein and fat, then we should be consuming the majority of protein and fat.
Yep, absolutely. The chat is very boisterous tonight, which is very good. And everyone's been really nice and polite, which is ever so good. We don't have moderators. We don't use moderators. We don't ban people. Haven't kicked anyone out ever. Don't try and be the first, though, will you? Right. Simon Jones is saying, should you fast if you're trying to recover from injury? I suppose it depends on the injury, because if you have a GI tract problem or a problem with the colon, maybe. But what would you say, Richard, in general?
In general, I'd say no. Look, fasting is so if you come down with a virus or an infection, fasting is fantastic because pathogens feed on iron. So when we stop consuming animal proteins, essentially, this is the quickest way that we can overcome an illness from that perspective. It can reduce inflammation, but then we need to remember that inflammation is also there for a reason. So the reason that you're inflamed at a site of injury is because the blood is there to supply the nutrients in order to heal and repair. So that's all. So we talk about reducing inflammation constantly. There are different types, and depending on the circumstance. Looking at the picture, I'm assuming Simon is a runner or active. So I'm assuming this is a sports injury or something to do with working out and training. I would not be fasting in order to avoid or to recover from this. If anything, I'd be increasing my protein and fat, and obviously resting is critically important. Protein and fat builds every cell within the body. This is how we create protein synthesis. And protein synthesis, in simple terms, is how we take photocopies of our DNA and we build new proteins from the amino acids that we've consumed within the diet. This is how we heal and repair. So if I'm injured, rest, and I typically increase my consumption. It's not to say you can't fast, but it wouldn't be my first port of call. But as Stephen says, it does depend on whether whether your foot's injured compared to your stomach. It's so yeah. But fasting incredibly beneficial, but not my first port of call.
Absolutely, and it's all about context, isn't it? By the way, I mean, if you had Richard mentioned that about the iron. And it just triggers a little bit about high ferritin. Ferritin is an acute phase reactant. The body is so smart. If your ferritin goes up, alarm bells apparently. Well, not really. If you've got an infection, you want your ferritin to be high. It's locking up the iron deliberately so the pathogens can't live. So anyway, right. Just a little aside there. Right. Margaret, where's your thing gone? There it is. Some say it's not good for women to fast during menopause. I'm confused. Because therefore you're thinking some people also say it's bad. I'm confused. Is it bad for me or not? I've been carnivore 18 months. Right. Sorry, go on, Richard.
No, go on. After you.
Well, the first question would be, if you're in menopause and you've tried fasting and you feel amazing, it's probably good for you. If you're in menopause and you've tried fasting and you feel worse, it's probably bad for you. Sorry to be really basic, but I think we don't know your history. We don't know how you've eaten for 30 years before, 40 years before, 50 years before, whenever menopause hit. So we don't know what your body fat percentage is. We don't know if you're lean. We don't know if you're very athletic. And it makes a big difference because if you're very lean, fasting can be problematic, full stop. If you have an overplus of energy, which is a polite way of saying your body composition is maybe not where you want it to be, and fasting might be beneficial. And then that's being very broad. And then you talk about menopause. Well, what happens during menopause, and how can that be helpful to fast? Well, for some people, if you're trying to heal and your body needs a little bit of a reset, if you're not eating, then a lot of its energy can be put into repair. And then you're also talking about how long are you fasting for. Anyway, sorry, Richard, did you want to add a little bit?
Yeah, look, menopause mimics the last phase of a cycle. So the ovaries stop producing estrogen and progesterones, these levels drop, and this can lead to increase in hunger, inflammation, flushes, soreness, cravings, and reduced thyroid, and so on and so forth. What I would say is that fasting is a stress on the body in some states, especially with women. If we look at the research that's done on fasting and the benefits conferred, most of these are done on groups of men. Women do work differently, and I think that women tend to do best on 2 to 3 meals a day, whereas men tend to do better on 1 to 2. There are exceptions to this. I do know some female carnivores who consume 1 to 2 meals a day, and they thrive. But I would suggest not fasting, because remember what we said in one of the earlier questions: a ketogenic or carnivore-based lifestyle essentially allows us to create the benefits from a fasted state. So we're talking autophagy, mitophagy, brown fat activation, lipolysis, improved insulin sensitivity. As long as you are avoiding high carb, which is critically important, and we're in the state, a ketogenic state, I think it's probably best to consume 2 to 3 meals and avoid fasting, because if you're struggling as it is and you implement fasting, it is a stress. And one of the things that we need to do is rest more when we're in that sort of state. And fasting can be a stressor. I'm not saying it's not beneficial, but again, just to reiterate, all of those benefits we can obtain and elicit through just by being ketogenic. So it is very much an individual approach. But I would say to start with 2 to 3 meals and not fasting, and just eat intuitively and see how you feel.
Yeah, and I think I was trying to set up the next question as well, you see, because this is also about fasting. If you're familiar with August Dunning and his 5 to 7 day dry fast to activate stem cells, can you say why he doesn't recommend it for skinny people and those with vascular issues? And exactly the same thing. If you're already thin, if you're very lean, you have lower fat stores. So your ability to provide yourself with energy is a little bit compromised. So that would be why I would imagine he's recommending not to do extended fasts if you're lean. So I have a couple of people at the moment I'm consulting with who are doing the extended fast for other reasons. So for therapeutic reasons. One is for mental health and another is for skin right now. And they're both reasonably lean, but the benefits they're getting from the extended fast actually is so literally beneficial that it might be a trade-off. So there's always provisos. If you do a fast that's extended like that, if you feel dizzy, lightheaded, if you can't get out of bed, if you have any pains, if you're feeling very cold, then you should stop it. Simple as that, because your body is saying, we need some incoming food. So yeah, there's a lot of nuance to it, but that would be the reason, because if you're lean, you haven't got those ready supplies of fat, and also you haven't got that insulation from the fat as well, so you could be more prone to feeling cold. So I would definitely say don't do it if you have vascular issues as well, because you're going to be changing your blood pressure. That's the main thing. Electrolytes, you could be low on electrolytes as well, so that would not be a good thing. So this isn't medical advice, by the way. This is just information in general, but it's just common sense, isn't it? If you're not having incoming food, you're not having incoming electrolytes. And you could also have a hydration issue there because of the electrolytes not incoming. So that would be bad for your blood pressure and your blood volume, and also your heart rate and other things. So, yeah, on the strength of us talking, please don't start a 5 to 7 day fast. Do consult with somebody who knows what they're talking about. I have a fasting certificate, but I do hate these YouTube videos that say X, Y, and Z, you should do this X, Y, and Z, and people just follow it because they trust the person. But really, there is a lot more nuance to fasting than just, I'm not going to eat for the next couple of days. And I definitely think that those provisos of feeling dizzy, feeling lightheaded, feeling cold, feeling in pain, definitely cognitive problems, you should definitely stop the fast. So yeah, try and do it with somebody that's fasted before, and certainly don't start fasting with a 5 to 7 day fast. You got to get your training wheels off. So do some smaller fasts, some 18 hours fasting, six hours of eating, those sort of things. Maybe a 24-hour fast, and just build yourself up. But yeah, great question. I think nothing less of that Agent 99. He always asks, or she always asks, good questions. This one is, I've waffled on because I know the next one is a Richard specific one. So is there any problems when taking 1 scoop of cherry bomb, that's an electrolyte that Keto Pro supplies, for those that don't know, is there any problems when taking 1 scoop of cherry bomb every day in the morning before some easy workout and long walk? How about calcium in it? Thank you. And Richard, can I just ask you, because you keep your light under a bushel, could you just explain what cherry bomb actually is, what's in it, and why people should take it?
Yeah, brilliant question, Herbert. So this is what I've got in there. It's raspberry bomb, by the way. The cherry electrolytes and raspberry bomb. Look, these are exogenous ketones. We do a unflavored version, which is devoid of sweetener for the elite, but they don't taste very nice. And the benefits conferred from the exogenous ketones, got to get the benefits conferred in, far outweigh any negative potential effect from the flavor or the sweetener. And we do use things like stevia, which in my opinion is one of the safest sweeteners to use. Talk for another day. So these are exogenous ketones. So when we consume these will increase ketones within the body. And I know there are many people within the community who believe that we don't require these, and you don't for optimal health. You can thrive on a carnivore ketogenic lifestyle, but they can confer benefits for a number of standpoints. So if you are struggling to get into a ketogenic state, they will signal the body to upregulate its ability to create ketones. So initially they switch off production, but then they signal the body to ramp up production. They also signal the body to increase the amount of mitochondria, the function of the mitochondria, the monocarboxylate transporters, which are the transporters that are used to send these, also the same transporters we use to transport hormones, by the way. So it can help improve this. It will help fight inflammation, supply energy to the brain, the body, and the heart. Essentially, we elicit all of the benefits from living the lifestyle by consuming this from an exogenous source. You don't have to, but I find that when I consume them, that it just takes me to another level. So there is a place for this, and we can get into this more in the school group. And there's lots of videos that I've done on YouTube in regards to the potential use of using these. Some people that I work with, for example, will give them to their husbands who are suffering with things like dementia because they don't want to change their lifestyle. So they'll give it to them as a drink, and this can actually help breach the blood-brain barrier and help negate the negative effects of these things. I've used them on clients who are type 2 diabetic, and it's increased insulin sensitivity, and managed to put them back into a non or pre-diabetic range, and sometimes in a non-diabetic range. This then increases ketones, gives them the energy, and then they've gravitated into living a lifestyle. I find that I function a lot better on the exogenous ketones. For me, I mean, this is fantastic, Coach Casey. Raspberry Bomb, incredible. For me, this is a late call in the night, and consuming the exogenous ketones just supplies this pure, clean energy to my brain and allows me to be compos mentis when maybe all I want to do is catch up on the sofa and fall asleep. So it's incredibly beneficial. In answer to the question, what was it? Every morning before, like I use it most days. Quite often, several times a day. Calcium, as you know, in supplement form, I'm not a huge fan of. But if you look at the amount of magnesium, the magnesium negates that. So the magnesium offsets the amount. So this is why the mag is higher than the calcium, because it will help offset this. And it is used and transported differently in the body to other calcium supplements. So the calcium in there is no concern typically. But it's I can see there's another question on there. I've lost it now in regards to different types of BHB, but we can get into that if we have more time. But yes, essentially here, but I use it most days. Use it as and when required. It's there it is. Yeah, please make us. So the reason that we don't just do a sodium is that if you
sorry, Richard, can we just read I'm going to read the question for people listening on the audio.
Read the question
because we can see it. Please make a sodium only Go BHB on Keto Pro with no fillers. That's from Amelia.
Look, we can do that, but it won't be as effective and potentially can be damaging because sodium is incredibly important. But when we consume this much sodium, we deplete potassium. And now we have dysregulated electrolyte balance in the body. The reason that the ratios are what they are is because this is what the body needs to maintain an optimal level. If we overconsume the sodium, it depletes the potassium, and then it affects magnesium. And so on and so forth. So there's a reason that they're in specific ratios. We can make it, but it's not going to be utilized in the body efficiently enough, and it's going to dysregulate or could potentially dysregulate other electrolyte balance. So there's a reason that we don't just do a sodium, and there's a reason also that we don't do one that is completely calcium free, because the calcium actually slows the absorption. So it basically allows the product to be to utilize at a higher rate for a prolonged period of time. This is why we add a little bit, but we offset it with the magnesium.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, so there's a lot of chatting. There's a lot of chat in the chat about the electrolytes, and people seem to love it. So, but I won't keep putting it up. I don't know how to pronounce this. I think it's Tallinn. Italian carnivore. 3 years strict carnivore, no plants, no dairy. Yeah, sounds good to me. Often, no, always, after eating 400 grams of steak, almost raw, blue, 1/4 fat, I get a feeling of hunger. If I eat omelette or fish, shrimp, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, you could be not consuming enough. It's easy to think that we're consuming enough when we. This is why one of the signals after being carnivore for a prolonged period of time is listening to satiety signaling. It doesn't work so well when you gravitate initially because the body is dysregulated in its hormone responses, and it's difficult to tell when we're full and when we're not. So we need to balance that leptin and ghrelin and restore those functions. But 3 years in, 400 grams of steak. I mean, that's around 100 grams of protein. It's it's not an awful lot. It may not be enough. I mean, it's you're consuming it raw and blue, quarter fat, which is fantastic. Try increasing more, but look, there's no reason why you can't consume the eggs or the fish or the shrimp, for example. I mean, these are incredibly beneficial and a high source of iodine and selenium, which will help thyroid function. The only reason that one would look at the eggs and the shrimp and the fish is potentially from a histamine response. But then there's ways that we can negate this. I've recently removed eggs I used to consume 6 to 8 eggs a day. I consume them maybe once a week. I still love eggs, but the high calcium content, was beginning to become problematic. So I've reduced the amount of eggs that I consume in. I love fish. I love king prawns and shrimp, for example, seafood, but they're not things that I can consume on a daily basis because of the increase in histamine, unless I'm consuming them with kidney or some other form of DAO. But just eat more. I mean, 400 grams, it's not an awful lot, especially if you're only eating once a day. I don't know how many times you are eating, but I mean, once a day, that's down the lower end of the protein requirement, depending on your weight, obviously, and the size of your frame and muscle mass and so on and so forth. But protein and fat, just eat more.
Yeah, I think that's great. I've just put a link in the description for people that might want to join the school group, because in a couple of minutes we'll be over there and we'll be doing the live question and answers for the people in the school community, just so people know if you're interested in being a certified coach or you're interested in an accredited certification in this way of living. In my description on my YouTube channel, you will see a link to Coach Peter's website. I've contributed a few modules to that. There's also been Eddie Goki. There's also been Dr. Sarah Zaldivar on there, Dr. Abs. So the information is top notch. And we've got a certain Richard Smith. He will be putting a module on as well. And it is fully accredited, which is a great deal if you're really taking it seriously. So yeah, if you're interested in that, you can link up onto Coach Peter's website and book a call, which is completely free, and he'll go through all the options for you. And the module I did there was obviously on bloods and also about the liver, the kidney. The second thing is to say, if you do like learning, Richard and myself will also be doing some educational videos on our school group, where you'll be able to join a premium tier to be able to get that. And the great thing there is you will be able to ask, once you're in the group, you will be able to ask for a video on any subject that you want. And if there's enough people interested in it, then we will do a response by video and actually go through the mechanics on that, which I think is really exciting. That was Richard's idea, by the way. I just thought we should do the normal things, all the videos, but in a bit more detail. For instance, Richard mentioned the monocarboxylate transporters. And if you look at really great sites like Ninja Nerd or Dr. Mike, and they're talking about thyroid, they don't actually mention the MCT8 or MCT10, which are the transporters for the thyroid, which are really crucial for getting T3, T4 into the cell and also then out. So, that's the sort of information you're going to be getting, top notch, up to date, best research that you can possibly get. So anyway, right. With that being said, I'm going to thank all the YouTubers. If you're only interested in this 1 hour with us, that's great. It was really nice to have you along. Richard and myself really like the questions. Sorry, we don't get to every single question. We do try to give you a proper full answer rather than say, we've got a video, go and watch our video. We actually answer the questions live and off the top of our head. Thank you for all the super chats. Richard, do you want to say anything before we go over to school?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody for joining. Fantastic numbers on the show tonight. I've just popped a link for school in there. So if you want to join our private call in our private school group, then the link is there for you to do so. But fantastic questions, and thank you all as always.
Yeah, it's been a great hour.